We have an amazing speaker and an amazing moderator. So welcome back, Ashutosh, and welcome, Sharma sir. So today's session is adaptability of fossil fuel industry to changing climate realities. This is the first in the series of sessions that we are holding on related to climate change. So we're starting with businesses, how businesses are looking at. So this week we have fossil fuel industry. Next week we have the renewable or the clean energy, as it is called, or the different sources. We'll be looking at that. So for the ones who don't know, I'm Pallavi Ade, the co-founder of Asian Pathfinders, along with Shreyas Deshmukh. So welcome to another edition of Asian Pathfinders Fireside Chat. So we started in 2020. We are a knowledge sharing forum. We are an open forum where we aim to bring scholars, practitioners, academics together for discussions and dialogues. We've held, I think, nearly 100 sessions. We haven't reached 100 mark yet. But yeah, hopefully in the next couple of months we will. And we do fireside chats, which is on Saturdays, the first 3 or 4 Saturdays of the month, and the dialogue is on the last Thursday of the month. And we are open forum, so we do put our sessions on YouTube because we know because of time constraint, not everyone can join in. And sorry, it's on a Saturday morning, but I think that's the best time we could figure. But yeah, so we do put it on YouTube. So do share it with your community if they would benefit from it. And we always welcome feedback and sorry, feedback from the community on the sessions that we can hold or how we can better ourselves. So please always reach out to me, Shreyas, write to us, and we'll be happy to discuss. So our community guidelines are first and foremost, please be on mute unless you're the speaker or the moderator, or when I or Shreyas intervene, please, because just because we record and we put it on YouTube later, so it helps us. And also respect the views of each other, but please put your questions and comments in the chat section. Ashutosh will take it after Mr. Sharma has made his remarks. So, like I said, these are email addresses. And moving on to today's session, Ashutosh will introduce Sharma sir. So I'll briefly introduce Ashutosh. Ashutosh is the founder of EnerStrat Consulting, a London-based international strategic management consultancy practice in the energy sector. He also serves as advisor for the Global Gas Center Geneva and is a distinguished fellow, non-resident at the Washington, D.C.-based Energy Policy Research Foundation, and is also the member of the advisory board of the Research Center for Energy Management at the ESCP Business School in London. He has advised leading international energy companies and their corporate and business unity strategies, especially in the petroleum and the petrochemical sector related to scenario development and planning, risk management and business modeling. He has also conducted due diligence for private equity and VC funds, provided analysis for macroeconomics and geopolitical trends in global energy and its implications for institutional investors and asset managers. He's also acted as an expert in a range of commercial renegotiation disputes, and trust me, the list can go on, but he has also has hands-on experience in technology commercialization, new product market and development, and organizational change and performance improvement. He has extensive experience in the carbon market, energy and climate finance, including a good understanding of energy, clean technology, and venture investing. And what I will say at the last, as he's also a very dear mentor of Asian Pathfinders. So over to you, Ashutosh.
Thank you, Pallavi, for the. I think we should curtail this introduction to a few sentences because it just feels a little embarrassing. But it's wonderful. I think the most important thing you said was the last sentence, and that is one thing which I do really value about all of this, is that the relationship of friendship and the ability to have fun together is absolutely important. I have a great pleasure in being the moderator for this session today, but I have greater pleasure that the main principal speaker for today is Mr. K.K. Sharma. Now, I have known Mr. Sharma for a number of years now. We have interacted with each other through when he was in his previous role as Director of Operations of NTPC. There is, in my opinion, no other person in India that I know who knows that the ins and outs of today's topic better than anybody else in the country. And he's truly an international expert. He's a practitioner that I have known par excellence. Now, from being a practitioner, he has now moved into the policy making space as a member of the Uttar Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission. So he is now a industry lawmaker, and his hands-on perspective and his, I think one of what I have always found, and Mr. Sharma, you will allow me to say this, is his he wears his expertise so lightly. It is actually almost inspirational to just listen to him, and how lightly he will give you some very easy data points to say this is actually what is going on, Ashutosh. So I really value that aspect of Mr. Sharma a lot, and I am really privileged that I am able to be in this session as a moderator. My task is actually going to be very simple. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to ask Mr. Sharma to make his remarks. After he has made his remarks, we will start the question and answer session. And I just want to kind of, for this audience also, just kind of lay a little bit of boundary conditions for today's discussion. And the boundary conditions are essential because Glasgow Agreement is still being negotiated. The Glasgow Agreement will have obviously some implications for India. We are not at the moment in a position to comment on the Indian position or what India should do, could do, etc. But I think this session is more important to understand how, if at all, we have to do anything, what would be the role of fossil fuels? And given the current villainization, as I call it, of the fossil fuel industry worldwide, I think this subject is a lot more of importance. So I would just, urge the participants to listen very carefully to what is going to be said, because it comes from the most authoritative source on this subject in the country today. So with that, I hand over to you, Mr. Sharma. The floor is yours.
My dear Ashutosh, founder and director of EnerStrat Consulting, London, expert on the subject, Ms. Pallavi, co-founder, Asian Pathfinder, and my dear friends. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you on the most relevant subject for the power sector, the adaptability of fossil fuel industry to changing climate conditions. In recent development, because of COP26 Glasgow Declaration, which is on the way, it has become more relevant. I would like to share with you some of the relevant statistics which set the perspective for today's discussion. India has installed capacity of 380 gigawatt, and out of which fossil fuel is around 210 gigawatt, nuclear 6.7, hydro and other renewable sources is 147 gigawatt. The Indian power sector used to witness peak capacity of 160 to 167 gigawatt, which has now reached up to 200 gigawatt level in the month of July. It is interesting to note that the peak has been achieved at 12 noon, with distribution pattern of 120 gigawatt fossil fuel, 35 gigawatt RE, and balance from nuclear and gas and hydro. RE has been contributed around 65 gigawatt out of 147 gigawatt. Thus, loading factor of 40 to 45% only. Being a noon time, solar was at its best. Had the evening hours would have been there, fossil fuel would have gone to 160 gigawatt out of 210 gigawatt available capacity. The energy contribution is around 75% from fossil fuel and balance from the other sources, which include 20% from RE in the year 2021. Now, let us see the trigger point of looking into subject matter. World needs a safe future. That is, we are talking of 1.5 degree centigrade ambient temperature mark, and for that 30 gigatons greenhouse gas emission to be cut annually by 2030. Transport and industry are not sufficient. We need to cut carbon emission by managing our land and resources efficiently, including building smart cities and curbing deforestation and food waste. Out of 35 billion tons emissions, world average is around 4.5 tons for the CO2 emission. And out of that, India contributes of 7% CO2 emission, and per capita CO2 emission is 1.7 tons. This 1.7 tons is further segregated in different area. On the analysis of the situation, it is evident that annual CO2 emission is increasing by 14.4 billion tons based on last 5-year data. Coal is biggest contributor for CO2. Oil sector is second largest in India. Country like India, fossil fuel contributes over 80% of annual demand. Over the period of last 5 years, RE contribution in annual demand has gone up and at present is around 13%. India has only 47 gigawatt of hydro that contributes around 3% of annual demand. Around 13 gigawatt of hydro is under construction, and 5 gigawatt hydro capacity is likely to be in next 5 years. RE capacity, as we have said, is 100 gigawatt plus and contribute significantly. But with the Glasgow Declaration, it is going to be further challenge. Meeting peak demand only concern for with only 47 gigawatt of hydro and 23 gigawatt of gas-based capacity. Peak demand went from 200 gigawatt, which is going to be further larger and larger. Generation of 4 billion units achieved in a day. EPS 19 predicted 5.6 billion units by 2027. So efficient and flexible operation of coal-based power station along with hydro is win-win situation for country like India. Efficiency of typical ultra supercritical power station at present is 42%, compared to subcritical of 38%. In India, 60 gigawatt of capacity has been added, which is based on supercritical in last 10 years, and another 24 gigawatt is on the way. 10 to 12 gigawatt non-reheat will be about to retire, and at the end of 2025, India will have a 45% of coal plant which will be of supercritical technology and can run efficiently with less CO2 footprints. India has set following declaration at Glasgow by our Honorable Prime Minister that by 2030 we will touch 500 gigawatt of RE, and by 2030 India will increase 50% in renewable energy. Carbon emission will be reduced by 1 million ton. Carbon 40% reduction. Net zero emission by 2070. To achieve this target, we need massive exploitation of solar. India has asked $1 trillion financing support, and apart from that, land technology is going to be big constraint. It will support with transport and system and power demand balancing. Seeing the pattern of utilization of solar RE resources contributes around 20% on energy basis. With the best sort of achieving 500 gigawatt, we will have to have achieved 20% contribution, out of which it will be around 100 gigawatt, equivalent to growth of power managed from solar. Hydrogen and fuel cell will have to be come in a big way, but potential is limited of hydro because of the gasation period. Gas is also not expected to go up. So under these circumstances, it is going to be very, very challenging. We have to manage carefully the demand curve based on load management, flexible operation of thermal units, part load operation of units. The strategy is the managing energy basket, where the existing capacity will remain and future capacity will be added from RE. All these need technology support and public at large support to move towards zero emission target. As has been declared by Power Ministry, that balance will be achieved by increasing the RE quantum and sustaining the available capacity of fossil fuel. We have to run the units on flexible operation mode, and for which technology is available. It is relevant to understand that India is a coal-rich country, and coal is an energy source available domestically. Even today, it is contributing about 75% of energy. Now, on his dilemma is we have to maintain CO2 intensity, meet the demand curve, and the reliability of power system. Certain actions have to be planned which will ensure all parameters of environmental laws maintained by thermal units and economics of generation. Affordable power is to be achieved by the country as a whole. We know power plays a big role in the economy of the country. It is thus essential that every sector of the power reform economically, and the cost subsidy to be supported up to the extent that with the clear transparency sharing the actual data. Some of the study could be adopted for the larger extent of the operation of thermal power station. Could be all non-renewed units to stop. The technological development like artificial intelligence and ML, etc. It will be possible to operate unit efficiently as part load also. RNF has to be adopted. Supercritical units should operate on base load, 85% minimum, instead of subcritical units. More and more hydro gas to be developed as hydro project can be used for peaking requirement. But as I have said, gestation period of hydro is going to be 10 to 15 years, so it is going to be a challenge. Battery energy storage system, green and blue hydrogen, all these are going to be studied for the future. In changing climate scenario, India should adopt carbon neutral electronics where oil is being used like in transportation, battery and hydrogen driven vehicle can be replaced by conventional diesel driven vehicles. The units of 200 megawatt and some of the 500 megawatt which are not which has achieved 25-year operation can be earmarked for flexible operation of units. I have got the opportunity of being a part of the Indo-German study on the subject, where we have defined the unit-wise requirement, how this flexible operation is to achieve. To support transition from night to day hours, day to night hours, RE is going to play a big role. Duct curve management is going to be a critical issue for this system. Fuel cell storage battery, they can play a big role in sustaining solar and wind operation. Load curve balancing from transformation to transport, domestic gas consumption and gas availability for the gas plant is going to be a critical issue. With technological development, cost will come down and adaptability of energy use would be feasible on larger scale. Some of the challenges in solar and wind energy, such as unpredictability, intermittent nature, required to be kept in perspective to ensure the smooth transition. While fossil fuel industry has matured and can survive without much of the support for required operation, RE would need for growth of financial and technical area. Resource support will be required for land, water, and other kind of support. A lot of policy intervention will be required from the government and regulatory bodies, and a lot of handling will be required to meet 4 factors to be considered: environmental, reliability, and cost is going to be critical component. With these few words, I thank you, Mr. Ashutosh, for taking further proceedings.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for a tour de force of numbers. Before I open the floor for question and answers, I would like to take the privilege of being the moderator and posing the first question. You mentioned the peak demand of peak going from 167 gigawatts to 200 gigawatts, and in that renewable energy contributing to 35 gigawatts. You also mentioned that this peak happened at 12 o'clock at midday. Can you actually explain the significance of these numbers to the audience? Because some of them are perhaps not from a very technical background, and it would be really useful to, from you to understand what does this mean for is it peculiar, is it normal, a peak happening at midday versus a peak happening at any other point of the day? What is the significance of it, if you could help us understand?
Technically speaking, over a period of time, the peak used to be in the evening or morning hours. And now, with the passage of time, it has started happening in evening hours only. The noon peak was a typical phenomena. One of the contributing factor was the weather condition. At that time, sweating and other things are very high, and so air conditioner load has gone up. That was one of the reason, and service industry also peaking. But if the load comes in the evening hours, RE component will go to almost zero. except some wind which is coming maybe 5 or 10 gigawatt, balance will solar will disappear. So in that circumstances, the load will have to be taken by thermal units. And then, as I have said, the load which is 120 gigawatt will go up to 160 gigawatt. So the role of thermal units will become more and more relevant in the larger perspective. And as India is having larger resources of the coal, so it will be in national interest that we sustain operation in an efficient and environment-friendly way, adopting best technology in the world for managing environment and managing efficiency.
So this is the most interesting insight, which is that, the peak, if it happens at midday, then the management of that peak through a solar or a renewable technology is possible. But even if that were to be possible, it also throws the greater demand on fossil fuels. So this is, I think, to me, and at least to me, this is the most relevant and insightful dimension to your intervention, that just because you have growing amount of renewable capacity and renewable production does not necessarily mean that it is a relatively reduced production for fossil fuels in our country. In the rest of the world, that equation is pretty much well established, that renewables are displacing fossil fuel generation. Whereas here, renewables are actually not displacing fossil fuel generation, but they are perhaps even to a certain extent driving greater use of fossil fuel generation. Would that be a correct?
Complementing each other.
Correct. And so obviously the logical next question then becomes is that how well understood is this peculiarity of the Indian situation compared to the others? Because the narrative that people read is, oh, as renewables grow, and also because, as you mentioned, even India in its statement has now committed to increasing its renewable capacity from 450 gigawatts, which I believe has already been achieved or about to be being achieved anyway. So, it is now well on course to achieve a target of about 400 gigawatts, 500 gigawatts by 2030. So, could you explain to us how, even if, say, this target for renewable energy goes to 500, in that scenario, what happens to fossil fuels? Will they eventually reduce? Or do you see that the cooling demand and the demand from commercial complexes for air conditioning, it will create a situation where this is going to be a ever rising demand? And in that case, I wonder what would happen to our peaking emission situation. At what point during the trajectory to 2050 would we get our peaking emissions?
The study government is adopted very simple. I have said use your basket management. So in the basket, 4 apple will remain 4 apple, and balance will be go on increasing so that the apple percentage goes reduce and carbon management is easier. That is the strategy government has adopted, and out of 500 gigawatt, as I have said, it will be able to contribute. There are two factors: one is the load management, other is the energy management. So in both the terms, we are not expecting more than 20-25% of the capacity for the because RE is consisting of number of components: biomass, hydro, gas, and then solar and wind. So all these having intermediate nature, and at a given point of time, capacity overall X plus Y plus Z is limited. So approach of India is to increase the percentage of RE so that the fossil fuel, even though it remains same level, overall percentage will come down.
Okay. Now, there is a question here, and your response actually, prompts one more question in my mind. But let's first go to Suvarna Deshmukh's question, who says the market for fossil fuels is becoming more unreliable, contrary to the available reliable sources for energy for now. I presume she is referring to the recent crisis of coal availability in the coal-fired plants that we have experienced in India. And therefore, she makes a very relevant point that as a result, the concern over energy security is now greater in the Indian context. So in this context, you know, how do you see this effect of the transition or the dilemma on energy security of India? What should government do to tackle the energy security dilemma that has been created?
I'll look into different perspective.
Yes.
Fossil fuel reliability is more important because even if it slightly impact in the month of September, we started feeling heat. So the role of fossil fuel in stability part is more and more important. Although it was a temporary crisis, and which was in fact not a crisis at all, because every year September, October, coal stock goes down because of the flooding of mines or less production in monsoon season. So this is going to be supporting the main overall power demand of the country. Other factors we have to see we are talking of the pump storage, we are talking of the battery, we are talking of hydrogen. These factors will have to come in a big way in managing the reliable energy basket of country.
So in that case, what you're implying is that this is not a very unique situation that we've experienced in the last, in the days, towards from middle of September onwards. But why was it this time so acute? That's my kind of follow-on question. Because
one of the reasons is the demand, which was used to be 140, 150 gigawatt, has gone into higher basket. So because of that, the coal has played more prominent part. I have spent around 50 years in the 40, 45 years in the industry. Every year it happens, nothing new.
Okay.
Only
that is
because demand used to be less, so it doesn't get permanent. Now the demand is touching a high, it got exposed.
So, given the wider discussion around fossil fuels, and we have discussed a little bit about coal, but we also have to accept that there are two other fossil fuels: oil-fired generation, which is still quite substantial in India, and gas-fired generation. Any perspective, sir, on both these two technologies? Because the perception is this, that there is oil available in India, but at a much higher price, and it is not a good idea to be producing oil or burning oil to stay cool, as one of my friends has once called it. That most of the air conditioning, most of the load in the South Asian countries is air conditioning load, and to burn oil to stay cool is not a good idea. So one aspect is that environmentally, oil, of course, is very difficult, almost as polluting, sometimes only slightly less polluting than coal. But then it becomes the question of oil price and our role as an oil import dependent country. But in the case of gas, it is even worse, sir, that there are gas-fired plants which are installed, but apparently the reports are that they don't have sufficient gas available. So what policy prescription do you think might be a mitigating factor for the problems created by coal of late?
It is a very tricky situation for the country. As far as gas is concerned, gas is available, but it is cost is from X to 5X, 6X times. So that is the constant. So I do not foresee any jump in the gas use or something miracle is going to happen. But the two key area, fuel cell hydrogen and battery, storage battery. These three components is going to play a big role for future. It is going to be deciding factor for many energy basket, replacing oil. There is no other way. Nothing else can happen. I don't foresee anything.
So when you say, therefore, when you say hydrogen, you presumably mean hydrogen production from renewable energy through electrolysis as compared to steam reform, methane reforming?
Yes.
Because, steam reform,
methanol is also...
methane is still natural gas, and natural gas, if it is not available, if it is not available for power generation, then it is not available even for hydrogen production.
But coal to methanol production is also being considered. If that area clicks, then there will be window for India, because India has got large stock of coal available.
So, for the benefit of our audience, can you explain how the coal to methanol strategy would work?
It is in development stage, so right now nothing much can be said except to wait outcome of number of pilot project
trials. Okay.
NTPC is also playing a role in that development. Let us see where we go.
So we have a question from Pallavi, who's saying the power consumption across various Indian states is different, which is true. And industrial states like Maharashtra would expect to consume more than less industrialized states. As energy is a concurrent subject, do you think the domestic energy policy of India should put more expectations on the industrial states on meeting the climate goals? I guess what Pallavi is talking about is, if there is a mitigation target or a carbon reduction target that the country is committed to, then would there be a burden sharing agreement where as part of the burden sharing agreement, industrial states would be expected to take a greater share of the reduction? Do you see that as a possibility?
See, in India, being a concurrent subject, there is a lot of politics also involved, where the state-wise strategies are different than the central strategy. But overall basis, the country will have to be driven from center for this perspective, and they have to take all the state on the board by different strategy for different state. That kind of things has to be done.
So that is a very interesting dimension, sir, because what is not clear to me, even after many years, and maybe because I have not looked carefully enough, is the policy towards the allocation of central resources to different states. Now, there are central generation companies like NTPC, NHPC, and others who are central power generation companies. And ultimately, they sell their power into the different states. Is there any guidance about how such allocation of a project should be made to the different states, or is it just based on the highest bidding price offered by the state? The power goes to the highest bidder. How do these things work in practice?
So far, this has not been done on bidding basis. It is only on allocation basis. And other things is being talked. And as said, the political situation in each state is varying. So some state is still relying on NTPC power, central power. Some state we are willing to develop own resources. Some are willing for IPPs. But the experience of IPP is also not very encouraging in long term. It is also getting almost stagnant. Not much of IPP is coming for the future. Actually, we are looking forward for IPP involvement. So let us see where we will go. There are some encouraging signs, there are some distress signs, both are mixed up. Under these circumstances, central company will have to play a key role that is going to be critical for the future. But overall basis, this is going to be a mixed basket. IPP, state, private entrepreneur, and as government is trying to involve for the solar area, small vendors also. Let us see. But recently, you must have seen Punjab has gone for cancellation of around 1,000 megawatt power PPA cancellation. So it's a complex subject. Nothing can be stated as this is going to happen.
Correct. But then I kind of would like to, in the interest of time, move to a certain other area of adaptation also, which is the adaptation around technology. Now, we have seen in India some very good developments, and perhaps one of the most cost-effective technology developments in the ultra supercritical power projects for coal-fired plants. So there is this dimension of increasing the operating efficiency of the existing thermal coal-fired plants as one mitigation option. The other one, of course, is more in the adaptation space, is around carbon capture and storage, or somehow making sure that you have a reduced carbon output for a overall level of production. Now, what is the state of play, sir, in terms of our preparedness, not only for ultra supercritical power, which I think is very well established, but what are the future challenges ahead for that? What is the kind of upper limit? And what's your perspective on how real is CCUS for a place like India? Do you think it makes any sense for us to even consider any investment?
Adopted two-pronged strategy. First is improve efficiency of the existing power plant, ultra supercritical, and now for IGCR, advanced ultra supercritical, 48% efficiency is being targeted. So that is one.
For advanced IGCR.
IGCR. There is a pilot project launched with NTPC, BHEL, and IGCR.
IGCR, correct.
So this is under development. So one pronged strategy is the increasing efficiency of the existing supercritical units. Point number one. As far as CCS is concerned, the cost is becoming the constraint. It is India, when gone for the SOx NOx control, already 30-35% cost is increased.
Because of the Supreme Court order on the pollution control equipment.
Yes. So 30-35% cost is increasing. Then the fossil fuel will become totally out of the cost-effective zone. So under these circumstances, some pilot project has been done for carbon capture technology. The technology becomes cheaper. Then this can be, or otherwise some funding can be arranged by the World Bank or other things. Then India can go for quick way. Otherwise, till then, I don't find much work on the carbon capture technology.
Interesting.
Some pilot project has been launched by two or three organizations, but again the cost is becoming big. There will be another 30-35% cost increase. So one will become 1.6, 1.7.
Okay, 1.6 will become 1.7.
One, right, without SOx NOx control, it was 1. So with SOx NOx, it becomes 1.3. And then it goes to 1.6, 1.7.
So that's the efficiency penalty, essentially.
Just I'm giving some odd numbers, maybe here and there.
Right. So there is another question from Shreyas Deshmukh saying, taking the above question in South Asia, we have energy exchanges between the countries like Bhutan and India, Bangladesh and India, or upcoming CASA 1000 projects, Central Asia, South Asia projects. Do we have any international treaty to keep tab on energy generation for export-import purpose? And who will be responsible for the carbon emission? This is an interesting dimension to adaptation, which is that you can adapt by actually sharing the load around or by sharing the burden around. What's your perspective, sir? Are these, I guess what is being alluded here is that all these agreements tend to be bilateral government to government agreements. Given the current state of play, it is difficult to predict how these government to government contracts might actually shape up. But are there any other non-government to government opportunities that could be explored on the table?
See, first opportunity for this kind of exchanges is from neighbors. So, we are already having such kind of arrangement with Bhutan.
Yes.
Hydropower is coming. Now, recently, Nepal is also in the fray for that. Bangladesh, we are exchanging thermal, we are giving thermal power to them, but not much work other than this being done. Now, recently, Prime Minister has mooted the idea of one sun, one grid, one that element. So if that happens, things, let us see things where we go. Right now, there is no such arrangement existing except some bilateral arrangement. There is a possibility with Pakistan, but then because of political relations, things are not going.
Yes. Although it is possible now that, IRENA having, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency, having now approved this one sun, one grid, one world concept, it is perhaps plausible that there will be some intergovernmental funding available for cross-border transmission pipelines or cross-border transmission electricity lines. The question still remains as to who is responsible for the resulting carbon emissions, because what Shreyas is asking is that the carbon may be generated in one country and consumed in another country. So in which case, what advantage or what is the incentive for a regional supplier to even invest in such capacity?
See, all development will take place with the passage of time. And then the negotiating power which country is having on higher side. Because the need and cost is going to be driving factor. If the power is costly, then things will be different. If power is cheaper, then things will be different. So it's what we say, basket management from one country to other country.
Correct.
It is a very difficult question to reply right now, except wait for things to happen.
Yes. My sense, though, Shreyas, is that a private sector consortium might be a better idea to do this. Now, private sector, or not necessarily private sector, but bilateral company-to-company structure, whereas not relying on a government-to-government contract or an agreement.
But the countries like small countries, you have to rely on the government. Private sector will become weaker there.
Yes, exactly. Although I have to say, I mean, one of the idea that I got for this was based on what we are seeing of recently in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, there are private now LNG terminals coming up. And with Bangladesh now, they're moving towards more gas-fired power generation. So a deal between private sector companies across these two countries where at least there is some semblance of cooperation, if not at least there is no open conflict. It might be
for Bangladesh, you remember NTPC is doing thermal power station in Bangladesh.
Yes.
As I understand, Reliance was working for gas side development. But
I see. Okay.
Political situation makes decision very difficult.
Got you. So there is one more question here coming up, which is from Satyam Malaviya. Given the prospects, and this is very much in your state, Mr. Sharma, given that you are now in the UP Electricity Regulatory Commission, the question is, given the prospects of industrial expansion in Uttar Pradesh in the coming decade with various smart cities like Kanpur, Agra, Allahabad planned, does Uttar Pradesh have the institutional capacity to manage this technological change? I'm not sure how you would call institutional capacity to manage technological change, but I think I will take the editor's privilege and widen the question a little bit and say, what can you tell us a little bit more about the smart city projects in Uttar Pradesh and whether any studies have been carried out as to what kind of impact they may have on the energy usage situation?
I am not aware of numbers on such studies. Some studies have been done, but I am not having often numbers available with me at my disposal. But this is the area which has got scope for the future, where some demand will increase. But massive jump is not expected in any city. You are not going to expect growth other
Massive
than
jump.
In the Hindu rate of growth.
Right. So in which case, given that, these are smart city models, obviously a coal-fired plant would not find a place within that setup. So can you give us a flavor as to what kind of fuel base we might be looking at for smart cities in Uttar Pradesh, or indeed for any other smart city projects in India?
Solar and backed up with storage battery is going to be level option.
Levelized.
Because that is going. Another thing which I am expecting to develop in a big way is the wind offshore and onshore capacity. Onshore development is already going on. Offshore development is also expected in a big way, because
Yes.
we have news that NTPC has an agreement with ONGC to develop offshore capacity of the wind.
So I know that in the case of what is that city? There are some cities where they are talking about waste to energy plants being integrated in the smart city concept. Now, would a waste to
it's a very low number.
Low number.
The 5 megawatt, 10 megawatt, 15 megawatt.
But that scale would not be sufficient to increase for a smart city project in a place like, say, Kanpur, Agra.
No. That's why I said numbers are very low. And recently, Delhi has tried this thing, and then management of waste becomes a challenging aspect.
Okay, so which means that the capacity that these projects can provide is much lower than the anticipated demand for the growth in these cities.
See that kind of capacity any city can absorb.
I see. So in which case, you mentioned artificial intelligence and machine learning. Are they being deployed in these concepts at this point in time?
Right now, no such technology is being talked for this, except the routine technology. But I have talked artificial intelligence and machine learning for the thermal power stations, supercritical units, where it can operate up to 40% PLF on a given day.
Oh, I see. So based on the existing operating track record, there has been software developed which will enable an optimization of the existing thermal power plants.
Without much investment.
Really. But then is it, what sort of a plant would be a better recipient of this technology? The reason I am asking this is that, as you're aware, NTPC plants, which are central power generation plants, their operating performance was of a much better level. Either whether it came to efficiency, whether it came to utilization, and overall, operations also. So will this, how will the state, if the improvement has to happen from the existing capacity, then presumably the greater investment or the greater improvement potential is available not from the central power generation companies, but from the state power generation companies. So for the state power generation companies, are the incentives aligned for them to be able to absorb technologies like AI and machine learning?
See, because investment is not much higher, it is possible for them to adopt. For second thing, we are talking this available for the new machines. Existing machine will remain, we will operate them and varying load, and when their capacity is also 10 to 15% of the entire load.
Correct.
As I have said, 200 megawatt machine, 500 megawatt machine, which are 25 years of operation achieving, so that they can be operated. But the other capacity which has come recently, supercritical critical units, will allow to run at this load.
Oh, so they will be allowed to, they will have to run at much higher load factor anyway.
Yes, and so that carbon,
so the overall carbon reduction is greater, correct?
It's a mixed strategy which is to be adopted, and accordingly things will have to 110 megawatt units are one by one being stopped. Already couple of units has been stopped, Badarpur has been stopped, Talcher has been stopped. Now state some units are also being stopped.
So those units have been stopped because of their age, performance, and capacity subscale nature, correct?
Yes. Talcher has completed 53 years of operation.
Because the next question is actually from Pallavi Ade, who is saying, how can the fossil fuel industry be taken on board to reduce Delhi's air pollution levels? Now, this is a loaded question in the sense that is the cause of Delhi's air pollution the fossil fuel industry in the first place?
There is one interesting statistic which has been shared in the Parliament Committee. There is recently IIT Kanpur has also come out with a study where you will see the fossil fuel contribution is less than 2%.
The fossil fuel is?
Contribution is less than 2% in pollution.
So what is the major contributor then?
Main is construction industry, transport industry, road pollution, all those things is playing big role in industry.
So would it be, so to take this argument to a different level, would it be appropriate to say that these studies indicate that for the pollution, carbon dioxide is not so much a culprit as particulate matters are?
Yes.
Particularly PM 2.5 and others?
Yes.
Now this is...
It is particle pollution, not CO2 pollution.
Now that is very significant, because if this is more widespread, if this understanding is even more widespread, it would perhaps even undermine the COP agreement that we are currently talking about, which is all about carbon dioxide. And maybe, we should have a COP for PM 2.5.
Anyway, these are difficult questions to answer. I'm sharing one data of IIT Kanpur research, which has given industrial area resources is 2%, MSW burning 3%, hotel and restaurant 3%, concrete batching 6%, industrial point resources 11%, domestic resources 12%, construction and demolition job 2%, diesel generation set 2%, emission aircraft and medical 1%, road dust 38%, vehicle 20%. This is data. This is published history.
Wow. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Question is answered.
It would be useful actually, sir, if what we could perhaps do is publish that study and or at least circulate that study to the members. If it would be possible for you to share that, is it a study you are in a position to share?
this is, we have to see the authentic data, because this has come in WhatsApp circulation. So, we have to get a study from IIT Kanpur and then share it.
Okay.
Because
okay.
that would not be appropriate for us to share without getting
Okay. Yes. So it means that it is not a public report. It is not yet a public report. But is it a peer-reviewed report?
It is a detailed study research paper by IIT Kanpur, provide research and facts about air pollution. Firecrackers are not even in the top 50. This is come at the time of Diwali.
So it's very recent.
Okay. The advice in defense of firecracker.
Right. Okay.
What they say, firecracker is not in 1% even.
There is one more question which is coming up. It says, we are talking about e-vehicles to reduce pollution. How long is this statement consistent until electricity continues to be fueled by fossil fuels only? Now, this is interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether you are, in a position to comment, with as frankly as you would have liked. But, if you can give us as frank an answer as possible, that would be great.
Very, very difficult to reply this question, because we have to see the entire chain of event happening. How much for 1 unit, how much CO2 is being generated on this side, how much is being saved. It is to be seen in totality.
It is a complicated economics. I completely agree with you, because
some study might have been done, which I am not aware of. But
because
of the cup, it looks like it should be saving.
Yes, exactly, and that is mainly because you're using a relatively more efficient coal-fired plant, and compared to the marginal or the battery price economics or the battery economics is still much higher than the coal-fired economics.
See, Badapur we have stopped, but there was a challenge at that point of time. If you can say the units are under operation or not. So much improved environment performance was there that even people cannot say units are running or not running.
So, one of the,
you might be aware, near Tokyo in Japan, around 40 kilometer area, there are thermal power plant which is some number, I'm not remembering, was under operation in Tokyo also.
Right. Now, I know, for example, in Copenhagen, there is a coal-fired plant which is actually supplying power for majority of that region. And interestingly, I also saw on Twitter this time that while COP26 negotiations were going on at the conference, the backup generation provided for the COP conference facility was a set of diesel generators. And those diesel generators, because they should not be seen, they were covered by protective screens. Anyway, are there any other questions? If not, then I think I would like to hand over the reins back to Pallavi so that she can make the rest of the announcements. Any questions? Last questions at all? Okay. In that case, Pallavi, can I hand over the reins to you?
Thank you, Ashutosh, and I think it was a very interesting and a learning experience for all of us, especially for me, because there's so much data and there's so much information that's there. So definitely thanks to our moderator Ashutosh for that wonderful discussion, but primarily thanks to our speaker Sharma sir for coming on board today and sharing his experience, because you see the experience that he's had over the years and years of working in this sector and the knowledge. So thank you so much, sir, and thank you to our participants for the questions. I know a lot of difficult questions were asked today, not everyone would have got their answers, but I think it's just a good place to start the discussion and start thinking about these topics. So thank you, everyone. And next week is on a renewable energy sector. So we'll publish the link to register on our social media. So keep an eye on that and have a good weekend. And everyone who's like me in Delhi, stay safe from the pollution. So take care, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much again. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ashutosh ji. Thank you, Pallavi, and my all friends, Shreyas
Thank
and
you.
other.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.